Hey guys, Steve Laff here. On this one here, I talk about circulators, and I go over different circulators. Usually, I'm talking residential use, basically. The most common one is a 007. Taco is the most common circulator. Now, there's an arrow on a circulator that's got to go a certain way. You can get the circulator with or without a internal check valve. All the new ones are coming through. You might as well just get it with the check valve built in. It's only $1 more or whatnot, and makes life so much easier. You don't have to put a flow check on a supply. Now, there's some guys that say that the circulator should go on the supply. It does a better job. I was always taught to put the circulator on the return down low. My reason being is it stays cooler. There's less wiring involved. It's a 110 circuit. If you've got the circulators down low on a boiler, the zone controls are there. You got to run 110 BX to that. So it's quite a bit of flex to the circulators. And if you got the circulators up high on a supply, there's that much more electrical you got to do. They say there's less air in the system if you put the circulators on a supply, but my thinking is they get hotter. They're on a supply. They're always hotter than they are on the return. I've been doing it for 30 years and putting the circulators on the return, and just how I've always done it. Never been an issue. But that's up to for debate where you should put the circulators. I don't know. You think about it in a residential house, say you got all them circulators way up against the ceiling up on a supply, there's a lot of wiring involved there. Bringing all the wiring up there, and they're heavy. It makes it a lot easier mounting them down low. So, I guess that's controversial what you think you should do with the circulators. I'd kind of like to hear what you think. I'm not saying putting them on the returns better than on the supply. I was always taught that putting them on the supply is better. So, like I said, they can be bulky, and I'm just going over different circulators. Like on if you go with high efficiency boilers, okay, and you're going to be doing radiant heat or whatever, you always have a loop on a high efficiency boiler, and then off that main loop you go with your circulation. So that main loop, that'd be a 0014. That's a high head pump, high volume pump. A 0014 is a real high on a 00 series Takeo. It's a high head, high volume pump. 0010's a low head, high volume pump. 009 is a high head, low volume pump. 007's low head, low volume. But a lot of times, if you're going with a 007 in a 3-family house, you just, you could raise your boiler pressure to 20 pounds through the water feeder, and you get the water up there. So depends on your application, what kind of circuit they're going to use. I try to go over that. I can't tell you everything in a little video, but I'm just trying to give you the basics, guys. And hopefully you guys get a little bit out of it. Thanks for
Alright guys, on this one here we're going to talk about circulators, okay? Basically what we got here is, this is the 00 series, which is probably on residential, one of the most common circulators you'd find would be the 007, which would come through with all package boilers. This right here is a 009, which is a bronze circulator you'd need for an aqua bank. Anything domestic water would have to be bronze or stainless steel. Okay, so you'll see this like if you got a tankless heater on a boiler and you got an aqua bank and you're feeding, the aqua bank through the tankless to heat up, you'd have to use this bronze circulator. 006, I believe it is. Yeah, that's it, 006. A bronze circulator. Now, a lot of times with these housing, if this circulator is burnt out, you can just unbolt it right here. Take these four screws out, and instead of draining the whole system out, and just switch these motor housing, the housing and everything. The price of this cartridge is going to be basically the same price you're going to pay for the whole unit. Maybe not so much on the bronze one, but the 007. A lot of times I'll just do that. But some of the old ones didn't match up. They were a little bit different. So you'll see some of them have Phillips head. And some of them will have a 5/16 head on the screws. But that doesn't always matter. A lot of times I'll try that. I'll try changing the housing before I, unsolder the whole thing. But that one there is for, domestic water. 007, very popular. Very, very popular circulator. Now you notice there's an arrow on here. Okay, if you're putting this on a return, the arrow is going to go the appropriate way. Now again, you could take these 4 screws out, pull that whole assembly out, and you can rotate this 180 degrees. For some reason, sometimes you're putting circulators together and the wiring's hitting type of thing. You could switch that around. You could turn that whole assembly right around. When you take that off, there's an O-ring that fits in there. You have to make sure the O-ring goes in there right. But that's not a problem. So don't forget, there's a direction on this. Now, some of these circulators come with a built-in check valve. So a lot of the new ones come, you can get them with or without a check valve. The check valve is like $1 more. You're always better off to get them with a check valve. It's just a little check valve that goes in here. Basically a flow valve. With circulators, you need to have a flow check. If there's no flow check, the system will work gravity. If you maintain a temperature, or if you have more than one circulator. So it's very important that, remember, whenever you're using circulation, you have to remember you need a flow check to stop it working gravity. The only time you want that system to work is when it's calling for heat, obviously. So that's what the check valve does. Alright, now on this 0010, you look over here now, we got a 10-foot head here, range. Okay, so you could use these on 2-family homes. A lot of times you'll see them. You come to on package units, 2-family homes. But now, for instance, this 009 here. This is for a high head pump. This 009. If you wanted to go with this 009, look at the head, 34 feet. So it depends on what you're doing. This 009 will definitely pump out the high head. 0010 is another high volume pump. A lot of times I'll put these in if there's an old old circulator, old style circulator in there. This thing here is a high volume pump. This thing will pump a lot of water right here. If you got a high volume system with old fashioned radiators, this 0010, it's only got a 10-foot head, but this thing will pull at 33 gallons per minute. Okay, what's the 007 put out? 23 gallons per minute. So it'll pump out a lot more gallons per minute. Common one, 007, 23 putts, gallons per minute. 0014, you'll see these a lot on high efficiency boilers on a bypass. They'll want that. This one's got a 22-foot head. See? 22-foot head and high gallons per minute. This is a good pump right here, 0014. But it depends on what you're going to do. A lot of times you'll see the 007s doing a whole house. Low and slow. Like they say in the cooking world, low and slow will work. Low and slow will win the race. But it depends on what you're doing. So the 007s are very, very popular one. There's some more old style circulators out there, Tacos. I'll show you some of them if I could. But this 00 series, they also got a 0015, which is a 3-speed motor, and they're pretty reasonable. Sometimes I'll put them in instead of the 0010. They're a lot cheaper than 0015s, and it's slow, medium, and high speed. Very good little pump. Now, there's controversy on pumps, where they should be located. I'm going to kind of go over that on the sketch, what I think and why I think it and all that stuff, but I'm no engineer. Alright, now here's the 0011 right here. Okay. 0011 has got a high head, head range, and also pretty high gallons per minute. So that's another good one. Depends on what you're doing. You might need something like this if you're going, a high-rise building or something like that. And another thing that'll help you, say you're running a 007 and you're having a hard time, you got a three-family house and you're getting a hard time getting the water up to the 3rd floor. If you just raise the pressure in the boiler to 20 pounds, you'll get that heat up to that 2nd floor with that 0010, that 007. So you got the 007. It's going to pump up 10 feet. That's without any pressure. Now, usually got 12 pounds pressure in a boiler. You bump that pressure up in the boiler to 20 pounds, that circulator will get up to the 3rd floor, no problem. It'll pump up to that 3rd floor, even with that 10-foot head. So that's something to consider. Don't forget the direction. It's very important that you put this thing in the right drive. I've been in jobs where guys call me for no heat and they got the pump in backwards. It's supposed to be on a return, but it's pushing the opposite way. It'll work, but it's got, if the check valve's there, it's not going to work. If it's got zone valves, it'll work. But if it's got a flow check, it won't. If you got one circulator and 3 zone valves, if you got this thing in backwards, it will work, but it's kind of working backwards. So it's important. And on these here, there's a round gasket that goes in this, that comes in the box. I always put the round gasket plus football gaskets. Now, there's 2 kinds of football gaskets. There's one that has like a 1-inch hole, and there's another football gasket that's got like an 1.5-inch hole. I like using the small ones with the 1-inch hole. It gives me more coverage around that regular gasket that comes with this unit. And I just like doubling up my gaskets. I use the one that comes with it plus the football gaskets. They're like a red gasket. They look kind of like a football. And I like to double them up because a lot of times, you'll put this on a replacement and you'll tighten this thing up and this thing will leak if you don't have that double gaskets. Alright guys, this is a 0015 I was talking about right here, okay? And you can see the check valve that I'm talking about right there also. See the little check valve? Now a lot of the new circulators, you can buy them, it comes with the check valve right in there. That's the way you want to buy them. I'm buying all my circulators with check valves now. But this is a great little pump right here. It's a little 3-speed. It's pretty reasonable. So you could put this in a place like a 0010. And this thing's a decent little pump. 0015, and they're reasonable. It basically replaces on high speed. It replaces a 0010 on the high speed. So it's a nice little setup. And they're pretty reasonable. These have been good little pumps. Just so you guys know, with a little 3-speed right on there. I like using those. And then they got this. This could be, for domestic water, either stainless or brass. A lot of them are coming through stainless steel now. But you couldn't use this on domestic water because they'll rust. This is strictly for hydronic heating, some kind of heating. It can't be used on domestic water. Domestic water has to be bronze or stainless. Alright guys, this is a common Taco circulator you'll see in a residential house. It's like a 110. It's actually a 100. There we go, 110 series right there. Okay. These things are very expensive. These motors are expensive. Usually what I'll do if I come across a situation like this, I'll take this thing out. I'll either put a 007 in, depends on the volume of the system, or a 0010, cartridge circulator. Because this one here takes oil. We got to oil the motor and takes oil. A lot of times these will drip. You can just change these housings or that motor. I have some of these motors, but these motors are like, $180 just for the flipping motor. They're crazy money. And this is expensive. You have to drain the system down anyway. You're better off just throwing a cartridge circulator in there. And again, it's got an arrow. This can only go in one way. This has to be facing up because there's oil you have to put in here. It's got a little coupler on it, a spring coupler. Now, they also got the B&G ones like this. They're red. And they got a different type of coupler, spring coupler in there. Very common in residential circulators. Alright guys, this is a very common B&G circulator right here. You'd see in a house. Basically that's a, like a 0010 series type of thing. I take a lot of these out. Again, when I come across these, I'll change these with a cartridge circulator. But, B&G's got cartridge circulators. They got 3-speed circulators. They got this style here. They got the bronze one. So, there's another good company right there, Bell & Gossett. There's quite a few different companies for circulators. Taco, Bell & Gossett, Grundfos. There's a couple of good ones out there. But that's a common circulator you'll see a lot of times in a house, residential. I'm talking residential, commercial, there's all different stuff. But once you get the basics of hydronics, it's all going to be the same. It will work.